Keep talking. Okay, well, again, we are in a digital world, and these types of glitches do happen. I was just sharing and thanking so many immigrant women who have made a difference in my personal life and in the life of so many of us in our community. I just want to say that my life is better and richer because of the immigrants who have worked so hard around me. Immigrant women are such an important pillar, not only of our communities, but of our economy. And I think as we have this conversation today, it is important to recognize that workplace success means and really translates into success outside of the workplace, into the family and into our communities. And particularly for immigrant women, we have suffered historically 3 times or 4 times as many inequities in the workplace. And it is kind of that struggle to gain parity and equity that is so present in our struggles on an ongoing basis. Because of our race and ethnicity, because of our gender, because as immigrant women, we've had limited opportunities for education and for professional development, because of our immigration status and language barriers that we've had to overcome and peel away so many of these barriers and layers in the workplace. And again, as that impacts our well-being and our ability to voice and exert our power. But despite all these odds, I am just amazed at how we managed to overcome these hurdles in the workplace. One most notable one that I think it is time and we must tackle in all the work that we're doing is finding ways to overcome the persistently and just egregious wage disparity. I think that is a key barrier in our community, and especially for immigrant women that I know, that I work with, and that I deal with on an ongoing basis. When we're making less than 79 cents for every dollar that others are making, this translates into being perpetually underpaid. And that translates into our ability to grow opportunities and to impact our economic security for ourselves and for our families. So I think that is a key barrier that we must find ways to convey and communicate to decision makers and business leaders. Pausing for a second, because our organization as Universidad Popular, we've been frontline on the ground dealing with immigrant families. We've had an opportunity to see firsthand the way that COVID impacted immigrant women in their workplaces. And I think that's another priority that will it's imperative that we understand that impact that COVID had in the workplace, because so many immigrant women were that frontline essential workforce that was so severely impacted. And we're still dealing with that aftermath. It's like COVID is still here. Women lost jobs, they lost income. Very few programs, especially for undocumented women. Yet these are the women that took care of everyone during the pandemic. I personally had the opportunity to serve and to work along with many farm worker, immigrant, undocumented women who are working in agriculture all over North County, here in San Diego. Many of them are Mayan women who are here on their own, who speak limited Spanish, speak no English, really are a vulnerable workforce, yet so essential. I also had a chance to work with many of the caregivers, who were sent to the front line during COVID, manufacturing, face masks. We just had a chance to work with so many immigrant women as frontline essential workers who are contributing and facing barriers and just exhibiting how few protections in the workplace they have. Many of them were exposed to COVID, yet have no health insurance. We're afraid to go to the hospital. Were exposed and really had to deal with the illness on their own, even as it impacted their families. So I think that dealing with the risks that they're facing before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID, is going to be really critical. And I just want to wrap up this part of my comment by just talking about how it is time to push policymakers and business leaders to prioritize and to acknowledge the contributions that immigrant women, who are very diverse, speak a variety of languages, are part of a very diverse socioeconomic structure in our community, but are so important and critical. So thank you for being here, and I look forward to hearing from my colleagues.
Thank you so much for painting that picture so clearly, Arcela. I would normally open this up to comment by everyone else, but you kind of opened the door for all the questions I was going to ask them. So I might make this a free-for-all. Joyce, I'm going to ask you your question, and then Corinna, I'm going to ask you your question, but please feel free to just synthesize all three, your responses to all three questions as we go. So Joyce, my question to you is, what are some unique contributions immigrant women make to the entrepreneurial landscape that lenders and investors should really be interested in supporting?
Okay. Oh my God. Arcela, you were amazing. You were going to say a lot of key things that I'm going to be talking about. I would say I'm also going to tell a story at the end of one of my clients, which we gave a loan out. And I think she represents what everything Arcela has been talking about. They're amazing women. And just to be an entrepreneur, you have to be so resilient and so brave. And these are women that come from a different country. They left their friends, their families, everything that they know in their lives, and coming to a new country and learning the language and learning the culture and learning how to navigate the road to entrepreneurship. These women, which I get a chance to talk to, are like, I'm in awe most of the time, how brave they are, how willing they are to leave their jobs and start a new business and start something for their family, which are going to create generational wealth in the future. Because, let's face it, everybody comes from a different place in this country. We're all immigrants. Even my family, my husband's family, it's been here for 3 or 4 generations, but they were immigrants and they got to start somewhere. But I just want to tell the story of one of my clients. I'm not going to mention her name, so she started a business. Her name is Mujer Brave. And brave, brave woman, that's the name of her business. And she's not only creating new jobs here in San Diego, she's also creating jobs in Mexico. During the pandemic, and after working in 20 years in a job which she was not getting ahead, she was getting paid less, like Araceli was mentioning. She was always trying to look for ways for her, the business owner to grow his business. And she was an accountant, but she was getting nowhere. She was getting no promotion. She was getting less pay than her counterparts. So she decided during the pandemic, I'm going to start a new business. So she looked back to her country in Mexico and to her small town, which they were known for making this amazing, beautiful leather purses embroidered. So she decided to go to Mexico and take her savings and buy persons and start selling in the United States little by little. And she's so strong. I mean, she's quite an amazing lady that she used her savings, and she still, I mean, the way we were able to approve her by a loan is because she was also doing Uber Eats and other ways to get money so we can justify the loan we were giving her for her to be able to buy the purses. But somehow she had maneuvered herself, took everything in her, and she was part of San Diego Women's Fashion Week this year, which was quite amazing. I mean, she was able to make so many barriers. And the women that are coming to us, why should we be investing in them? Because they're like that. They don't take no financier. They're willing to go the extra step, work really hard. And that's why we should be helping them out. We're going to help them out. By helping them out, we're helping ourselves out. Because why? We're creating jobs. We're creating more money for Social Security. Even the ones that are illegal, they're creating money for Social Security. We always forget that part of it. We always think, oh, they're taking from us. No, they're giving so much from us. And like Arcela pointed out, all those migrant workers, I mean, have you ever worked in the field? I mean, I was just working in my garden and I'm dying. Okay. I can't imagine working day in and day out as a field worker. I mean, it's really hard. I did it one time, and one of my friends, he had grape grove and we were picking up grapes, and it was just for, it only lasted 2 hours. I mean, how embarrassing is that? These women are doing day in, day out, but they are so strong and they're willing to start new jobs. I mean, it's just, I'm just in awe by them, by the immigrant story, especially immigrant women, how strong they are, resilient they are, because they're not only breaking entrepreneurial, break roads, you're also breaking that gender break road, which is really, it's really astonishing, because a lot of these women come from countries that which they don't have that much power, they haven't had a voice in the past, and right now they're coming here to this country and they heard about the American dream. I mean, I know that sounds kind of, sometimes you go and the American dream, but there are opportunities in this country, and they're coming here to look for the opportunity, and they're breaking roads. I'm not saying it's easy, it's really hard, and I'm not saying everyone's going to be successful, but they're really trying. And I'm just, like I said, awed by all these people that come, this all movement entrepreneurship, they want to get it started, and they start just really small, and they grow it, and they grow it, and they grow, and they grow. And hopefully my story of Mujer Brave, of Mirna, she will be successful. I know she's going to be successful. Her purses are gorgeous, but she has this drive in her. If you hear her voice, you just know she's going to succeed no matter what.
Well, the story that you tell is beautiful, and it's so perfectly in line with what we're trying to convey. I mean, everybody, whether you're an employer or an investor or a customer or someone who's not engaged at all, should understand that the drive behind these women to accomplish even something average is so much, the potential is so much greater, because if they didn't have those barriers, how much more could they accomplish?
Can you imagine? I mean, I'm just, this woman would be like amazing. I mean, CEO of this multinational corporation, because we're talking language barriers. I mean, we're talking people with huge accents, and once they hear your accent, they're like, I'm sorry. It's like, I've lived it. My accent's gotten so much better with time, but as soon as they hear an accent, something happens. I mean, which is sad.
And we definitely need to shift the paradigm. People look at people with challenges and think less of them, when in fact, they should think more of them. And at this point, I'm gonna throw the conversation in Corinna's direction, because Arcela, you mentioned legislation, and Corinna, being a council member, a city council member, what current legislative successes do you see advocating for immigrant workers, and what more needs to be done? And this is where it could turn into a free-for-all for all of you. We're all friends, so have at it. If you have to jump in, please do.
Yeah, I welcome all the conversation, and it really is an honor to be here, especially with Arcela and Joyce. Hearing your perspectives and all the work that you do, it's incredible. Here we are, creating opportunities for our community to become more tighter knit, stronger, right? More collaborative, more self-determined, and at the end of the day, more resilient. And, you know, I'm going to tackle the question by saying what we don't do, because often, you know, our cities, they have civic centers and they're anything but that, right? We can have resilient civic centers where there really is inclusive civic engagement happening. Because I want to tell, you know, I love the stories, and I think, you know, coming from immigrant entrepreneurs myself, that's the reason why I'm able to even do this work, right? Because of the privilege of having grandparents who were immigrants, who worked in agriculture, created their own business. They started a nursery. I got to grow up there, right? Even though I was, you know, living in an illegal ADU at that point, right? A garage conversion. Me and my cousins got to grow up together. And as long as we stayed out of the way of the customers, we could build our forts, we could run around. And that's an opportunity that my grandparents gave to me, and it's paying dividends, right? So, you know, I want to talk about what we're not doing, and we are not embracing the power of our immigrant community. One really simple example is we have a project here that's actually breaking ground construction this year in the City of Vista, in the heart of District 1, which is the district that I represent. And it's in a Latino empowerment district. It is a $4 million grant that the city received, and it is 100% because of our residents who would love to be citizens, right? They love their country, right? They love this country. They have their children here and their families here, but we all know the barriers and the time that it takes to become a citizen, but they're not taking that as, you know, a reason to not engage civically. They saw an issue with a corridor here in Vista, town site to West Los Angeles and North Santa Fe, where it's just unacceptable, right? The amount of vehicles traveling at high speeds. You know, we're talking about a population where, one, we should honor them because they are on the front lines of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. They are walking, they're taking transit, they're biking, and yet we don't provide them the infrastructure, right, to do that safely. So, you know, a group of women, and, you know, there's an overlap here at Universidad Popular. We had a great Centro Cívico here in Vista. I'm always telling Arcela, please, I want you back. I mean, it was just incredible to see, you know, Universidad Popular engaging in these types of conversations. At Vista Community Clinic, we have Poder Popular, and there's a lot of crossover with these líderes, right, with a matriarchal type of society where, you know, the women are taking charge and they're telling the city, we don't like that this is happening, right? We don't like the fact that, you know, the other day someone was almost hit and they were walking their child with a stroller, right? The fact that there's no sidewalks, that there's no safe crossing, no mid-block crossing, you know, these freeways that have been built, essentially freeways dividing our communities. How do we create an infrastructure and opportunity for individuals, everybody in our community, including, right, creating a way for immigrants to lead, right? Well, that happened here in Vista. And when opportunities like that are either given or they're made by sheer determination, everybody wins. We received this $4 million grant to create better mobility and safer mobility in our community. And we would not have gotten that grant had it not been for the countless hours of these líderes advocating for their community at large. And they were the ones showing up to the workshop, right? It was a super competitive grant. It was like over, you know, 300 applications. They only chose about 50. And the City of Vista was one of them, and it was a big project, right? So this is what happens when communities decide to create an inclusive way to take in comments, questions, concerns from the community. And I really do believe that our civic centers should be more than, just a place where, in Vista, it's every second and fourth Tuesday, there's a city council meeting. People should be able to go to that front desk. They should be able to call in. They shouldn't have English only options. There should be an easy way to get information that you need, whether that's assistance when it comes to rental assistance, utility assistance, knowing how to apply for a street vending permit, right? Knowing what's going on in your community and being able to sign up, right, for different information to just come to you automatically. There's so much potential at every single city civic center to really become a hub for our community. And that's something that I think we need to hold our elected officials accountable, especially in a city like Vista, where, we have such a large population that speaks a language other than English. It's over 40%, right? So, that's the perspective that I come from, because I've seen it work. And now this year, after this, and this is just one project, right? I mean, this group, they also met with Congressman Mike Levin, and we do a trash pickup every Wednesday. When we were walking, some of the matriarchs in the community were like, hey, this street doesn't have sidewalks, it doesn't have lights. They were able to bring all their concerns, have a platform at Vista Community Clinic to speak with Congressman Mike Levin, right? I'm able to advocate, saying like, yeah, this is 100% what's happening on the ground. And then all of us get to come together, and, we might be getting $2 million infrastructure that has never been there before, that is going to make it safer for mothers, children, everybody, right? So there's just so much power in our communities that a lot of times people don't think twice about someone because they have an accent or they can't speak the language, right? And it really it shoots ourselves in the foot, right? I mean, when we have inclusivity and we create more power and agency within ourselves and within our community, it serves us a lot better.
Thank you so much, Corinna. And these are all opportunities to evolve. Just because something has been a certain way forever doesn't mean it has to stay that way. That's why we are human beings. We can evolve. In cities, there's a growing awareness that cities, for example, were built for men, by men, without the consideration of what the needs of families and women are. And the fact is, pregnant women are not going away. There are always going to be pregnant women, and there are always going to be children. There absolutely have to be. So they're not giving, ground. So obviously the city structures have to change in order to accommodate that. I would love to give both of you, Arcela and Joyce, opportunities to comment at this point, and then Corinna, feel free to jump in as well.
Yeah, I can begin, and just wanted to add to what Councilmember Contreras was mentioning, because we've seen the model of empowerment really begin to make a difference in immigrant communities, where immigrant women are the leaders. We're seeing it now. We, I think, can only begin to imagine like what it will look like given the support and given the resources, because their leadership is making the difference in our communities at every level of advocacy. And it is about really working outside of the systems that have kept us in our place for so long, and envisioning new models and new opportunities for collaboration, where we see the intersections of health, of education, of civic empowerment, really joining and creating a different level of opportunity for immigrant leaders. I work every single day in my work as a community educator and civic leader, with immigrant women, I see that passion, I see their commitment, and I see them taking leadership. I've had an opportunity to work with many of them during the last decade when we started doing advocacy work in Vista, where Corinna is talking about these immigrant communities that are undergoing empowerment at the moment. And we see changes happening in every area of our community. And I do think that one of the areas that has been lagging is in that, really moving to economic justice, bringing the resources and the economic opportunities that can really amplify that change. I've seen it work, and I hope to continue to work with collaborations and to have representatives like Councilmember Contreras, who are really leading the way and opening spaces that we didn't have access to in the past. And hopefully the same with the opportunities that Joyce is sharing with us, where we haven't had this kind of investment in our community. We've had sidewalk vendors, we've had women who have been selling their tamales and the fruit stands, all around our neighborhoods, but they've been struggling, have never been recognized, for the work that they do and the contributions they make. And I think it is important to provide those resources and the economic investment that is needed in our community.
I would say it's great to bring all those resources available to them in the civic centers. I mean, throughout the many cities here in San Diego. But unfortunately, I've seen it, they make it kind of hard. I mean, the whole process of getting a business license sometimes is a little obtuse to some people. I would want to see that they make it a lot easier to get a business license and to go to the civic center and get the answers they need when they're trying to open a business. Because instead of helping them out, it seems like they're putting too many barriers in front of them, and only a few of them are able to get ahead. And I mean, those are the people that I even see they have barriers in front of them, and they have us to back them up. We're able to send them to different organizations that would help them, get ahead, get the business license. We send them to the San Diego Business Center, or we send them to the SBDC, the Small Business Center, where they have business counselors that can help them, guide them through the pathway, how to get the licenses. But there's a lot of people that are being left behind. They're people that we should be able to help them out. And they go to the civic centers and they're not getting the help. And even, I don't know if you guys noticed, there's so many grants that were out there for during the pandemic. Even right now, some cities have grants for small business owners. But if you read the requirements, what they have to fill out, they make it almost impossible for a lot of people to apply. You need basically a full-time job to be able to fill the whole process. It seems like they're writing a grant, Congressman Contreras had to get the $2 million for her city. We need to make that a lot more easy and accessible. We shouldn't be making it so hard that people are jumping through so many loops, and you're creating this barrier, which immigrants are not able to get ahead. And we need, like we said, we need to make it easier. We need to make it in their own language. I mean, even though a lot of cities have it and they're bilingual or trilingual, but we make it simple, which will allow people to open their business and make those informal businesses a lot more legit. The señora that sells the tamales, or the other one, the guy that sells the tacos or the paletas, make it more legit. Let's bring them back to the economy. I mean, that way, it's better for all of us. We're creating jobs, we're creating more taxable money, and it helps everybody in the community if we're taking a look at from those perspectives.
Yes, thank you so much. Corinna.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to say I completely agree with that. And that's where, that should be a focus. And no one's really talking about how non-inclusive, right, how discriminatory our buildings are, our civic centers are, right? Because it's just been status quo, business as usual. And even for someone who speaks the language, who, has like 3 degrees, right? It is difficult to get a business license there. And then you can come across different obstacles. You don't know how to rebut those obstacles, right? how to break down barriers, even if you don't have yourself language as a barrier, right? Or education as a barrier. So I totally agree. And I really want to push this conversation to every city here, everywhere actually, but like we could focus on San Diego County, right? How can our civic centers become more inclusive and create resilience in the community by creating those economic opportunities, including, right? We haven't talked about wage theft. We talked about how the fact that, we make X amount of dollars, cents per every dollar, but then on top of that, sometimes we don't even get those 79 cents, right? So there's so much wage theft. And I know I see it here in North County. Where is it that someone can go where they're not going to feel threatened to go into that space, right? And they're going to be able to get help getting that money that they worked really hard for, right? So I really do believe that we can have a fundamental transformation in our civic centers. And it's simply, right, it takes the political will. A majority is 3 people out of a 5-person council. And that's something that I really, truly believe that we can get there. But we need to have the conversation, and then we need to hold people accountable to making those changes.
Thank you very much. And I will say that you can go to the Employee Rights Center for issues like wage theft. That's why they're there. and they are extremely successful as well. At this point, I'm going to move on to our second set of questions. But again, for those of you who are just joining us, we're here with Vista Councilmember Corinna Contreras, Arcela Nuñez-Alvarez of Universidad Popular, and Joyce Parra of Accessity. We'd love to see your questions in the chat, and we will address them at the end. So Corinna, I'm going to throw it back to you. As a legislator, are there conversations or collaborations, and this kind of segues onto what you were just saying, that you wish were easier with other kinds of San Diego leaders to support these conversations, to support the interests of employed immigrants?
I think the problem is that if you're not someone who is actively pursuing those conversations, you don't necessarily hear about them, right? So I can tell you from my position, I really am not connected to that space, and that's something, how can we change that? Who is going to facilitate those questions, those conversations? It can be really difficult as an elected official to move in all these different directions. And that's where, an organization such as the Kim Center, that really, this is an incredible conversation, right? So I really do believe that San Diego County is ripe for these types of conversations. And then, right, it can't just stop at a conversation. It needs to continue. It needs to go. It needs to be codified, right? It needs to go into the municipal code. It needs to go, right? At every level of government, we have the opportunity to be policy driven and implement these strategies that are going to make our economy stronger. It's going to reduce, social determinants of health, right? That our immigrant families and especially women face. So I think that we need to have these conversations in public, right? What is it that we can do at the city level? Can we initiate a discussion? And, I love, and this is an invitation, I absolutely love to bring presentations to my city for the public record and for my colleagues to witness in person, right? Where it's not just an email that can be easily ignored. So right now in the City of Vista, it only takes one council member to put something on the agenda. And I invite you, if you want to make a presentation, let me know. That's something that we can schedule for this year or whatever timeline works best for you. But that's an open invite to everybody. Let's have a conversation. Let's start having these conversations in public, in the public record, which then opens up civically a way for people to come and speak during that meeting as well. Because I think once we start having these conversations, we can start acknowledging that we need to do something in a policy way to make sure that we are creating a stronger foundation for our entire community, which means that immigrants, women, right, have every opportunity to strengthen our community, and they don't have to do so without fear of retribution or feeling like they're not welcomed, right? Because we just haven't operated in a very inclusive way, but we can change that. It's all about changing the foundation and systemic issues that we have. And we have to do that. I mean, there's no other way forward.
Thank you so much. And that codification is precisely the kind of outcome that we're seeking out of our playbook to bring these stakeholder voices together. Joyce and Arcela, would you like to comment on who else you think should be talking to each other and how to get past some of the difficulties of arranging certain groups from talking to each other?
Go ahead. I think it's crucial that we all speak to each other. I think there's so many organizations here in San Diego, and each day I find of another organization they're working for the immigrant population, for women rights, but we all need to be working with each other and need to know what we're all doing so we can provide better information to the immigrant population here in San Diego. I think we're all doing, sometimes we all do our own thing and we're not talking to each other. I think it's crucial for us to be speaking to people like Congressman Contreras and to Arcela Nuñez and to know what they're doing, and also for them to know what my organization is doing. I don't know if you guys were familiar with Accessity. I mean, we've been here in San Diego since 1994, providing access to capital, people which are not bankable at the moment. People sometimes don't know about us. And I mean, I think I spend my whole time talking to bankers, going to chambers, but I don't think we get our name out there. But I think by talking to each other and finding out what everybody does, I think we can help that segment of the population which has not had a voice, has not had an impact. We need to know what everybody's doing so we can direct them. Hey, you can go here and get that information. You can go over there and they can help you out. And we need to make people aware of everything that we do, because I think a lot of us are doing a lot of work and some people are not aware of what we're actually doing. I think especially at the civic centers, I think that's a great place to start, because I think a lot of people, especially if you want to start a business, they're going to be inclined going there and asking for information. How do I start a business? It'll be great if, Corinna and the Vista Civic Center, hey, if you want to start a business, maybe start going to the San Diego Women's Business Centers, go to the SBDCs, get some classes, get that information that you need to help you grow. That way, education is power, and that's the best way to get ahead, because otherwise people are going to be left behind the sidelines.
I would also like to add that it is very challenging, but I think it's long overdue to bring together the networks and sectors that traditionally work in isolation. And I'm thinking specifically about how the discussion and who gets to own that discourse in our community around economic development, right? And how currently economic development conversations are completely separate from immigrant rights issues. And I think that's just an example of how economic justice and kind of really building equity into those conversations necessitates that collaboration. As long as we continue to have economic development corporations running separately without knowing the immigrant community, especially the needs that immigrant women have, it will continue to perpetuate that inequality and stereotypes that are so prevalent in our community. And I think this conversation can begin to raise awareness about the need to bring these stakeholders together. I know, for example, right, our region just underwent the process of submitting the proposals for the economic development grant funds from the state that are supposed to come into a region and really build that economic opportunity and equity. Yet I think we saw with proposal development that happened, how traditional economic development networks didn't even include voices from certain parts of the county, or like that leadership and really insight that we need in order to bring the resources and empowerment that is needed in different regions of our county. So I think that collaboration is really necessary. It's long overdue, but it's really challenging just to overcome that power, you know, that has been there, and the folks that have had it for so long have not been willing to open up and provide those opportunities for new voices to come in and to contribute.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I am excited to say that the regional EDC is very much committed to the LEAPS process that the Kim Center is helping to spearhead. They're part of the Alliance, and they want to, you know, their main initiative in this area is inclusive growth. So it is their hope and all of our hopes that this will redefine how economic growth is viewed and distributed throughout a region. You all have covered so much, and you've covered a lot of what would be in my next question. So I'm going to open this one up to everyone. Arcela or Joyce, if you want to comment first. We work very much, the Kim Center works very much based on data. So we just closed the first ever, really, regional workplace equity assessment, and we're processing the data right now, and that will inform our playbook conversations. How does, in your opinions, data, you know, concrete data like this, improve San Diego's response to social justice needs? What partners should be working together, and what cautionary tales might you have for us?
Yeah, I can begin, and I just wanted to say that as a researcher myself and someone who has been advocating most of my life to increase understanding about the communities where I work, data is critical. And being able to really get those numbers and that accurate picture of what our community needs are, what those opportunities are, is really fundamental. Where I think we also have to be very strategic is about the voices. Again, having conducted research in a previous life, I also got to see how research that has really excluded the voices, right, of especially immigrant women and undocumented community members in our community, and how what research shows us sometimes it's really incomplete unless we are strategic and are able to be inclusive in our approach. And that participatory framework, I think, is really critical in our region. I think being able to gather the data that is really representative of the experiences and the voices in our community is a very important first step. Just because we do have, I think, a sector in our community that is hard to reach. And immigrant women, particularly undocumented communities, are part of that group. So their voices are critical. And I think being inclusive of their perspectives, their experiences will help us to design programs and approaches that are really going to serve that community. being linguistically and culturally sensitive and responsive is part of that participatory approach. I think it's critical and it needs to be ongoing. There needs to be an allocation of resources to be able to continue to conduct that research and keep it current and have it driving our prioritization, in various communities.
Thank you. We have about 7 minutes left, and I'd love to hear from Joyce and Corinna.
Okay, I was going to say data gives us a snapshot of what's going on right now at the moment. It gives us an idea how well we're doing or how bad we're doing. As Arcela mentioned, it gives us an idea of how we need to improve in certain areas, especially in financial education and financial access, because there's in a lot of parts of San Diego, a lot of people don't have access to financial resources. I mean, we're talking just a simple bank account. They don't have a way for them to open a bank account, a simple checking account or savings accounts. And sometimes when they do that, they're being charged $10 a month for a simple savings account, which is, that is just awful. I remember I was working with a migrant project here in San Diego and hearing that news of you're being charged $10 for your savings account. That's just unreal. People are making minimum wage and the wages are below minimum wage and you're charging $10. We need to bring resources to them, simple access, not just predatory lending access, because if you go to a lot of Hispanic markets, you see this financial center where they'll give them a loan, but instead of helping them out, they're going to hurt them in the long run. Access to capital, to money at 35-40% interest rate, which is really the worst thing it could happen. So data gives us that access to be able to see how things we can improve for them. And that's one of the things I think the mission of our organization is to help people which are not bankable at the moment and help them strive also financially. And a lot of people that will come to us just want to say they're not going to get a loan to us, but they're going to walk away with a wealth of resources. And what I'm going to make sure also, I was trying to make sure that people get all the resources they can and get ready to get to the next step. So I think, and with our organization, we always take snapshots every month to see how we're doing. Who are we giving the money to? Are we giving money to the people that fit our mission also? So we want to make sure that data gives us all that great information to be able to help the immigrant population, give them access to capital.
I just completely agree. Joyce, you bring such an important perspective to this conversation. I'm thinking about when I go to some of the markets here in my district or throughout the city or, anywhere, and it's payday. I see people lined up and, when you don't have a bank, and you have to pay an astronomical amount just to cash that check, and you need to cash that check in a timely fashion, it's unacceptable, right? It's diluting the economic power of our community, and that money is not staying in the community, right? It's going somewhere else. It's like transnational money. It's gone. So, that data is just critical, especially at a city level, right? Especially when it comes to, I sit on the board of North County Transit District, right? So when we're looking at transportation, right, understanding all these different intersections is critical, and data is one way to get a really good sense of what's happening, right? Even when we know something, we feel it, we need the data to be able to really articulate what's going on, and then to take that information and figure out how to remove some of these obstacles, right? How to connect to different resources and opportunities, or how to get, legislative change, right? How to get policy change, how to codify solutions into our community so that it really, we're not seeing already the most vulnerable in our community be in these predatory spaces. So I just really, this is an incredible conversation. I'm so thankful to hear, what other organizations are doing and how we should all be having more meetings like this, right? So thank you again so much. It's incredible.
And thanks to you all for your insights and your sharing your experiences. It's very interesting, the comment you made about, I guess, with lending institutions or predatory lending institutions, that kind of astronomical interest and stuff that they're charging members of the community. That money isn't going back into the community. You're absolutely right. It's funding their international branches or holding companies or whatever. So yeah, that's another thing that we should be standing up against as a community. This conversation, I'm so looking forward to having you all participate in other similar conversations, whether it's related to the playbook or not. They need to happen. They do need to be codified in clear actions, and San Diego can do it. One of you said that the time is ripe, and you're absolutely right. We have the right kind of leadership in place, the right kind of mindset, the right kind of social trends. And if we can do it, anyone can do it, and we will show the world how to do it. Thanks again to our speakers for generously, really sharing your time out of your busy schedules. And thanks to our audience for joining us for this episode of Uniting for Workplace Equity. I hope you'll like and share the post and add your questions or thoughts in the comments. Have a wonderful day.